Hi, this video is going to give an overview of migration patterns in the United States. And if we look at the global, at least selection of countries globally, we can see that the United States has one of the largest immigration rates of any country in the world. In fact, a good number of countries have a net loss of people every year. On this table, we can see that Mexico, for instance, loses about 500,000 people from 2005 to 2010, so about almost 100,000 people per year. China also loses a lot every year, as do Pakistan and India. Of course, China, Pakistan, and India and Philippines are all very populous places. Indonesia too. And the competition is very strong in those places for jobs and those kinds of things. On the other side of this table, as we see the United States receiving within the time frame 2005 to 2010 about 1 million people. Of course, as a country of 350 million, it's only 1 out of 350, but it's still substantial on a global scale. Spain and Italy are also receivers, as is Canada, but at a much lower rate. And you can see the rest for yourself. Within the United States, a lot of the migration that has taken place has some notable patterns, such as what's referred to as Sunbelt migration, which has been the steady movement away from the north and the Midwest down to the south and out west. Eastern and northern populations are relocating to places like California, Florida, Texas. That's where a lot of new economic opportunities are arising, and it's also where perceived quality of life improvements can be had, sometimes related to the climate and so forth. Another pattern is the rural-urban migration. For a long time, the United States was characterized by rural to urban migration, but there have been some particular reversals there. The rural rebound in the 70s, and another reversal there in the 90s. But the overall pattern has been movement, and it's not unique to the United States. Most countries have had a similar movement of their rural population to the city. This table, busy as it is, shows some of the geographic origin of immigrants to the United States over time, kind of showing you how the sending countries have shifted from the 1800s through the present. And if you go back to the beginning, you can see that primarily the sending countries were Northwest Europe. In the 1820s, the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, you see millions of people leaving Northwest Europe to the United States. Almost all of the immigrants were from this part of the world. By the time we get to the turn of the century, the 1900s, we start to see a lot more from Southeast Europe. You can see that shift here, right? About 1890, we have equal parts Northwest Europe and Southeast Europe, but by 1910, there's a complete reversal. A lot of that could have had something to do with World War I, people fleeing Europe coming to the United States, which was a more peaceful place to live. 1920s kind of slowed down again, about equal share Northwest Europe, Southeast Europe, but then Latin America started to increase as a sending region. Asia all along has sent people. Of course, that's picked up more heavily in recent decades. Latin America, though, in the recent decades has been also the main sending region. But as you can see, perhaps in the 80s, for instance, Asia actually sent more than Latin America to the United States. Africa, this is more difficult to measure, of course, but has also been sending more people over. And then, of course, elsewhere, you've got a mixture of countries. So this is a kind of somewhat complicated story, but it starts with Northwest Europe, shifts to Southeast Europe, then to Latin America and Asia, with a little sprinkling of Africa going on at the same time. It is important to note when we're thinking about immigration to the United States about the forced migration of African slaves, but that goes back all the way to the mid-15th century when Africans were forced onto ships and brought to the New World, which largely started in the Caribbean, but included parts of Central, South, and North America eventually over time. And of course, Africa is a very diverse continent, and many of the slaves that were sold were actually captured by other African tribes, and this was some of the dynamic going on. Of course, the transportation of slaves to the New World was a long, difficult one. There was harsh treatment. Many died of malnutrition and dehydration. Estimates vary in terms of how many came over. The number is somewhere between 15 million who lived, but the other estimate is that for every one person that made it, 3 died. So it's possible that 60 million, as many as 60 million, were put on boats and brought over, but only a small number actually made it and survived. So in summary, I think it's fair to say the U.S. is a nation of immigrants. The flow of international migration has tended to coincide with different political and economic dynamics happening not only in the United States but also in other parts of the world. Remember that there are push and pull factors. But of course, industrialization, development, and economic opportunity are major players in shaping flows of immigration.